So this here is a video on how to paint the Master of Possession from the ShadowSpear set. And as you can see, he's all done. We've done him with flames. We've done the front and the back, including the small Eye of Horus, the feathers, the coat, the standards, the flails, everything is here. So if you'd like yours to look very similar to that, please stay tuned and you will see how we got here from where we started at. So today we're going to start doing the Master of Possession from over on ShadowSpear box here. We have the ShadowSpear set, you can see it in the background. So the first thing we did with him is we primed him with a rattle can of Chaos Black paint from Citadel. And we're going to be using all Citadel paints for this. So the first thing we're going to do is with a base of Xandri dust. And we're going to work around a very watered down layer here, getting all of the bone work. And we'll probably have to do 2 coats on him just to get the coverage we want for the base. So we're finished with our Xandri dust, and as you can see, we did the head, the staff, we did these skulls and tags on his chest, we did all the skulls dangling from the cloak, as well as the 2 on the corner of the backpacks. So that got us to where we are now. I think the next thing we're going to want to do is try to get inside of these these cloaks. It looks like it's going to be the next hardest part. So we're probably going to do the red for the cloak at this point. We're going to start with a base of Mephiston red. And with a very watered down layer, we're just going to start putting that on now. Don't worry if we make too much of a mess, because we are going to come back and clean it up later with the black in the end. But for now, get a good base layer down. Probably take 2 coats. So with our Mephiston red finished, I think what we're going to do is continue with the cloak and get the cloak completely finished. Because getting inside of here is just going to make a mess on anything else we do. After our Mephiston red base layer, I think what we're going to do is add a shade of Carlsberg Crimson. And so that's just going to help us bring out all the detail on our cloak here. And once again, it's okay to make a mess, because we're going to clean up pretty much everything else around it. And we may want to make a couple of layers of this. So we're going to let that dry. We may do a second layer. Once this one's finished. Now with our Carlsberg Crimson shade finished, what we're going to do now is take Evil Sun's Scarlet, and with that what we're going to do is do a nice dry brush over the miniature just to get a bit more color there. So that'll do our dry brushing for our red. And what we're going to do now is we're going to start looking at the feathers on the back shoulders here as well. And when we're doing the feathers on the back, what we're going to do is take a base of Rackart Flesh. We're going to start doing these feathers here. Trying our best not to touch the red that we just finished. I'm using a very, very thin down layer. So it'll take 2 coats, but it'll definitely get into all the crevices there that we want to do. So now that we've got the Rackart Flesh finished, what we're going to do is add a shade, and I think we're going to add Rakelin's Flesh Shade, because if you look at the box art, you'll find that there's a red tinge to all of these feathers. So we're going to get a little bit of a broad brush that doesn't hold a point anymore. And we're going to start painting up a shade into these areas here. Something like that. So we'll let that dry and we'll come back. Now that our shade is dry, what we're going to do is take a little bit of Pallid Witch Flesh and we're just going to dry brush that on and light that back up now. Just like that, see? Now that we're done the Pallid Witch Flesh, we're going to start on these feathers. So what we're going to do is get a little bit of Incubi Darkness, and with our fine detail brush, we're going to do these feathers just like that. Being very careful not to go on the background plumage of the whole shawl. I'll probably take 2 layers to get the color as rich as we like it. Like that. We're going to do the other feathers and move back here. So now that we've done our Incubi Darkness, what we're going to do is add a little bit of a dry brush of Blue Horror on all of these feathers. Just like so. And it just gives us an edge highlight and brings up a bit more of the detail. Like so. And like so. Just to bring out a little bit of detail there. So your feathers look like that now. And they really stand out. So with our feathers done, what we're going to do is go back to dealing with the skulls now. So there are a few spots that we managed to miss along the way with our Xandri dust. So we're going to go back and bring that back to life. On the back, there are actually 3 sets of bones here. We'll just change our lighting for a minute. Just so we can get those, because we want to be careful not to go over our red. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take a little bit of Agrax Earthshade and we're going to start shading in all of the Xandri dust areas. So we're going to shade it and try to get some of the details. We're going to try to be careful to not go over our finished colors, such as the feather coat and the red shirt. So we'll keep doing that. And as we're shading, what we want to do is make sure we fill in every one of the skull's eyes on the bottom here. So that's what we've got for our final shade. We're going to leave all of that dry before we come back and move on. Now, while waiting for the Agrax Earthshade to finish drying, I also took a tiny drop of Carlsberg Crimson shade, and I put it right into the forehead of the skull of the staff. We're going to color that over with a highlight layer, but I wanted the red into the groove before we did that. While still waiting for the Earthshade to dry, I came to the conclusion that the cloak isn't as bright as I'd like to be on the highlights, so I'm going to go over another dry brush of Wild Rider Red over just the very, very highest areas there. Just like that, just to make that pop a little bit better. We'll keep waiting for the shade to dry. While still waiting for that shade to dry, which is taking quite a while, we're going to start on the gold trim, and we're going to use Retributor Armor for that. So, we've got a well watered down layer. And we'll be very careful to go over anything we're going to paint gold. Try not to make too big of a mess, but we are going to go back over it with the black in the end, so we still have room to clean up. This is what it looks like when we're finished with our Retributor Armor. We also took the opportunity to put a second Agrax Earth Shade over the horns. With the Retributor armor, we did the staff circle with the 8-pointed star. The one on his back, I did that skull, leaving the other ones as actually bone. I did the ball in the hand, the knee, the belt buckle, and on the back, just more of the backpack dressing and the Eye of Horus with the 8-pointed star there. So that's everything there. We're just going to leave all of that dry before we add the next layer. We're going to start working on the rest of that skull and skeletons. So we're going to take a dry brush layer of Screaming Skull, and we're going to start working on these skeletons down below here, these skulls. I'm going to try to do that for the rest of them, and then for the goat head on the staff, and then for the main head, not the horns, and then the skulls on the backpack as well, and the ornaments are on the necklace, and then the bones on the back. So we'll do that, we'll make it back here. So now that our Screaming Skull is finished, as you can see, we've really lit up the face, and then the ornaments, the staff, the skulls at the bottom, and the bones on the back, and so forth and so on. So now what we're going to do is wash the gold. So what we're going to use is the same thing we used before. We're going to use some Reclin Flesh Shade, and we're just going to wash all of the gold, giving it a reddish, yellowish gold hue. Flip the model over, do the same on the back. Just like that, and we'll wait for that to dry before we put our highlight layer on the gold afterwards. But we're going to start working on a different color. We're going to start with a base of Dryad bark, and with that we're going to do all of the leather as well as all of the wood on the model. So we're going to do the holster. We're also going to do the staff, the wood, and there's a leather bag on his hip. There, and the handle of the knife. So we'll finish all those items and we'll wander back here in a minute. So now the Dryad bark base is done, what we're going to do is put a little dry brush layer of Gortha Brown over all of the leather and wood. So now that we're finished that, we're going to use Baneblade Brown, which is an even lighter shade of brown. I'm going to dry brush that on the handles. And over the knife handle. Run one over the edge of the horns up here. Just like so. Now what we're going to do is take a little bit of white scar, and because this is white, a very, 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 very dry brush, because white tends to be considerably overpowering. And we're going to do the ram's head up here. Something like that. I'll move on from there. So now that we're finished that, we're going to start highlighting the gold. For that, we're going to use Liberator Gold. Something like that. We'll let that dry and we'll move on. With that being the end of our gold highlight, we're going to move on to a little bit of lead belcher. And we're going to do all the metal parts on the model, of which there aren't that many, but the rebreather respirator is one. We have to be very careful while we're hitting it. And on the other side as well, the pistol has to be done as well. Then we have to do the horns on the staff up to the end. And there's one tag here made of metal. Its counter tag is over here. And all the hooks on the belt here. And that effectively is all our metalwork. Well, with only tiny details left to do, I think it's time to clean up the rest of the model. So now it's time to take our Abaddon black, and with a very, very detailed brush, we're going to ever so slowly start going through all of the black and coating it again, bringing it out. Watching out for all of the other colors that we're finished with. So we'll do those and we'll come back here. This is our model after we finished the black. So we went around all the trim as carefully as we could. We also took the time to do with black the ropes around the standard as well as the ones holding the skulls in place. And then we took a little bit of the screaming skull we had left and just did the bandage around the holster. So we got that done. We did black all around the backpack and all around the vents. We also did a little bit of lead belcher just as a trim around there. Lead belcher up the top of the post. And then black all over the hands just to clean all of that up. And now we're ready to move on to our next step. So as we're moving along, we're going to take a little bit of Newell oil and go over any of the silver stuff we did earlier. In particular, these horns up here. And the gun in the holster. What was that medallion? And the one on the neck here. Just like so. So we're cleaning that up nicely. We also took the time to put some Newell oil in the two bone vents on each side. Now we're going to take a little bit of Screaming Skull again and just trace over this spell scroll here. It's a good time to finish cleaning up these bones. And then we're going to put a highlight layer over these vents again. So it's all winding down now. Now that the Newell oil is dry, we're going to do a dry brush layer of Iron Breaker over all of that, with the exception of the little medallions here, here, and there. Those are going with Stormhold Silver. So we'll do those and we'll meet back here again. Finally, we're going to take Troll Slayer Orange. And with that, I'm going to do the eyes of the ram head staff here. As well as of the demon himself. Like that. Then we're also going to take a little bit of that Troll Slayer Orange and do the Eye of Horus right here. So we're pretty much finished everything except the flames, which we're going to deal with right now. So we're going to take a little bit of Ceramite White, because we want the flames to have a solid base. And we're going to start coloring over all the areas of flame here. So we're going to do that one, that one, and the one in the hand, and meet back here. So the Ceramite is finished now, the Ceramite White. You can see the flames are all base coated there. While we're waiting for that to dry, we're going to take a little tiny bit of Uriel Yellow on a very small detail brush. I'm going to put it right there in the center of that orange as we slowly work on our Eye of Horus. While we were waiting for the Ceramite to dry, we ended up basing them with just a little bit of normal white glue and some sand. So the Ceramite is now dry, so we're ready to start working on the flames. And it's going to involve Casanadora Yellow, which is a shade. And in this case, what we're going to do is use it right out of the pot. We're just going to brush it onto the flames. Try not to get it onto our skulls, which we already finished. And you want to leave a little bit of white at the very bottom in some places. So we'll leave that there for a few minutes for that to dry before we add the next color. Now, just before the Casanadora is fully dry, we're going to take a little bit more of our Troll Slayer orange that we used earlier, and very, very watered down. I'm going to blend it with the yellow and the higher parts of the flames here. Like that. And we're still going. We'll meet back for another color in a moment. So as you can see, when it's dried, we've got a lot of orange there. We're going to add a little bit of a darker flame on the top by going with some Wild Rider Red, which we used earlier. And we're just going to brush that on the very tips. Just like that. And then we'll wait for that to dry. While we're waiting for that flame to dry, we're going to take a very, very fine detail brush. And put the Eye of Horus stripe in there, just so we've got that sorted as well. Lastly, we're going to take a little bit of Carlsberg Crimson. We're going to use that right out of the pot as well. And we're just going to shade the very tops of those flames. Like that. And then we're just about finished. So the model is just about finished now. I've already clear coated it, so it's now protected. The only thing I want to do now is bring out the Eye of Horus. And we're going to use a little bit of technical art coat, which is going to give us a little tiny bit of gloss. Just like that. And we're going to do the same one in the back here. Just to make that into a gem. So this is the final model. All the coatings and glosses are done. And as you can see, he's turned out quite nicely. I hope that yours turned out very similar. And if you found this video useful, feel free to like and share it. Subscribe to the channel and you'll be able to catch all my next painting that we do. As new releases come out, you can stay right on top of them. And thank you for watching.